Hi, I'm Mabel. This is my first time doing this, so please bear with me. I'm told I need to look at the camera and speak like I'm talking to a friend. I don't have friends, I have books. Books don't judge your delivery. Okay, let me start over. I'm Mabel. I'm a librarian, or I was, a fairy librarian, in a library that exists between worlds, thousands of shelves, millions of stories. My job was to guard the ancient collection and keep everything in perfect order. It was quiet. It was wonderful. Nobody asked me to be on camera. Then I sneezed. Not a polite sneeze. A full-body, catastrophic, knocked 3 shelves over, set off the magical alarm system sneeze. And somehow, I still don't understand the physics, I spun right out of my own world and landed here, in yours, face first, in a park, on a Tuesday. I've been trying to get back ever since, but honestly, I'm not trying very hard, because your world has coffee, and blankets, and pastries that aren't enchanted to bite you back. Now, in my world, if you want to share a story, you just put it on a shelf and people find it. Beautiful system. Very civilized. No one has to smile at a lens. In your world, apparently, you have to sit in a chair, look into a small glass circle, and perform enthusiasm. They call this hosting. Where I come from, we call this punishment for junior librarians who shelve things in the wrong order. But here's the thing. I found these stories, the Happy Novels collection, written by Dee and Leo, and I can't stop reading them. Wolf shifters who fall hopelessly, recklessly, absurdly in love. Women who don't take nonsense from anyone, including the impossibly powerful men that fate picked for them. And the talking animals. I thought talking animals were normal until someone on the street gave me a very concerned look when I tried to have a conversation with a pigeon. Apparently that's not a thing here. You people are missing out. So I made a deal. I sit in this chair. I talk to the glass circle. And in exchange, I get to share these stories with you. It seemed like a fair trade. Ask me again after episode 10. Every week, I'll introduce the story, tell you what you're in for, the chaos, the heart, the laughter, and then I'll let you settle in and listen. Think of me as your reading companion, the one who's already finished the book and is absolutely bursting to talk about it but won't spoil a thing. Okay, that's enough about me. First time on camera. I'm told rambling is normal. Apparently so is the urge to wave at the lens. I'm resisting. Let's talk about why you're actually here. The story. Today's happy hour is called Paris Magnificent Muffin, and I have to warn you, there is a cat in this one. A very large, very opinionated, extremely magnificent cat. His name is Muffin. He hates his name. He will tell you about it, at length. He can also talk, read ancient languages, negotiate with a donkey named Gerard, and solve a murder using nothing but his intelligence, his dignity, and I'm not going to spoil it, but let's just say his personal hygiene becomes key evidence. This is the story of how a woman named Simone lost everything and found the one colleague she never knew she needed. It's funny, it's heartbreaking. It involves a jailbreak from a municipal animal shelter and a very specific arrangement of sardines that will make you cry. You're not ready, but you will be. I'm Mabel. This is Happy Novels. Today's story is Paris's Magnificent Muffin, written by Dee and Leo, and narrated for you by the lovely Jessica Lee. I wish my voice sounded like that. I've been taking lessons. It's not going well. Now settle in, get your coffee, get comfortable. Let's begin.
Chapter 1. Someone had put a jackhammer inside a 13th century tomb, and Simone Fontaine was expected to be professional about it. She pressed her palm flat against the limestone wall, 500 years old, carved by hands that believed words could outlast empires, and felt it shudder like a living thing. Dust sifted from the ceiling in fine gray sheets, settling across her open field journal, her camera lens, the inscription she'd spent 3 hours photographing with the care of a surgeon and the budget of a graduate student. The jackhammer paused. Blessed silence flooded the chamber. Then Kevin started singing. Kevin operated the jackhammer in the adjacent chamber. Kevin had opinions about Marseille's midfield. Kevin sang off-key power ballads during his breaks with the confidence of a man who had never once been told the truth about his voice. Simone closed her eyes, counted to 10 in French, then in Latin, then in Proto-Celtic, because if she was going to lose her mind inside a Cathar tomb, she would do it in a language worthy of the location. The university had sold this excavation as preservation through modernization. A noble phrase. It meant ripping open burial chambers, installing LED track lighting, and funneling tourists through sacred spaces for €12 a head. Simone's job was to translate the inscriptions before the renovation crews paved over them, a task the senior researchers had deemed too minor for their attention and too deep underground for their knees. She'd been assigned to Le Cercueil, the coffin. A passage so narrow she had to crawl on her belly to reach her designated chamber, dragging her equipment behind her in a bag that smelled like wet pennies and academic disappointment. Nobody visited. Nobody checked her work. Nobody asked about the Cathar priestess whose funeral rites she was painstakingly decoding from stone that had held its secrets for 5 centuries. Simone didn't mind the solitude. She minded the jackhammer. She packed her camera, secured her journal, and crawled out through the passage, elbows grinding against stone, dust filling her mouth, the ceiling 2 inches above her head. She emerged into the main corridor coughing and filthy. "The mole returns," the stocky crew foreman called from behind his thermos. "Find anything valuable down there, Professor?" "A 5th-century funerary inscription," Simone said, brushing grit from her collar. "Priceless. Can you buy a car with it? Can you read?" The foreman's smirk stalled. His colleague snorted into his coffee. Simone moved past them before the exchange could escalate into anything resembling a conversation, following the corridor deeper into the complex where the air grew warmer, damper, heavy with the mineral breath of stone that hadn't tasted open air in 700 years. She heard the mason's hammer first. Tap, tap, tap. Steady, unhurried. The rhythm of a man who had been fitting stone to stone since before Simone was born and saw no reason to rush the process now. Each strike carried an apology in it. "Sorry to disturb you, old wall, but this needs doing." Marcel Deschamps knelt in the side chamber, easing a support brace into position with hands that treated limestone the way most people treated newborns. Beside him, on a canvas dropcloth that had been folded and arranged with a precision that bordered on architectural, sat the largest cat Simone had ever encountered. Not large in the overfed, under-exercised, too-many-treats sense, large in the sense that a Maine Coon had made some truly ambitious genetic decisions and followed through with absolute commitment, 25 pounds of caramel and cream fur erupting in every direction like a Baroque painting of a lion that the artist had refused to stop working on. Tufted ears, enormous plume of a tail currently wrapped around colossal paws, and a face that communicated, with devastating clarity, that he was aware of his magnificence and found the world's failure to adequately acknowledge it both predictable and tiresome. The cat was watching Marcel work with the expression of a building inspector who had been assigned to this project against his will and intended to document every code violation. "Bonjour," Simone said. Marcel glanced up, nodded, returned to his hammer. The cat's gaze shifted to Simone, traveled from her dust-caked boots to her limestone-streaked hair, lingered on her field journal with what might have been professional interest, then dismissed her with a slow blink that said, "Noted, filed, not urgent." "Beautiful cat," Simone offered. "He's okay," Marcel said, without looking up. The cat's left ear rotated toward Marcel with the mechanical precision of a radar dish acquiring a target. "He goes everywhere with you?" Simone asked. "He goes everywhere he wants." Marcel tested the brace with his palm, solid. "I just happen to be where he's going." A sound came from the cat. Low, nasal, unmistakably a snort. Simone stared. "Did he just—" "He has opinions," Marcel said. "About what?" "Everything. The structural integrity of this chamber. The incompetence of the engineering reports. The inferior quality of the site's coffee." Marcel packed his level back into his tool bag. "And right now, about you." "About me?" The cat sat up straighter. His golden eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her feel, absurdly, like she was being interviewed. "Your posture suggests chronic stress," the cat said. "Your cuticles indicate you wash your hands compulsively after handling artifacts, which means you actually care about preservation, rare in this circus. And you smell like proto-Celtic funerary dust, which tells me you've been assigned to the deep chamber that nobody else wants." He paused. "I'm Muffin, by the way." Simone's mouth fell open. "Yes, Muffin," the cat continued. "It's a terrible name, I'm aware. I've lodged formal complaints. Marcel chose it when I was a kitten, and he found me asleep inside an actual muffin tin. He thought it was charming." It was a moment of weakness that I have been forced to carry as a permanent identity, like a tattoo acquired during spring break. "Your cat," Simone said to Marcel, her voice climbing into a register she didn't recognize, "is talking to me." "He does that," Marcel said. "Incomplete sentences. Long ones, usually." Marcel shouldered his tool bag. "Don't get him started on the coffee. You'll never get him to stop." "The coffee is an atrocity," Muffin said. "I wouldn't wash my paws in it. And I've washed my paws in a puddle behind a gas station, so my standards are not unreasonably high." Simone gripped her field journal hard enough to dent the cover. The dust, the poor ventilation. She was hallucinating. That was the only rational. "You're not hallucinating." Muffin's whiskers twitched. "That's always the first assumption. It's predictable and, frankly, insulting. I went to considerable effort to learn your language. The least you could do is accept the results." "How?" Simone's throat had gone dry. "How is this possible?" "How is what possible? Language? Consciousness? The ability to form complex sentences?" Muffin yawned, displaying a pink cavern ringed with teeth. Marcel was already walking toward the corridor. He paused at the entrance and looked back at Simone, something almost warm crossing his weathered face. "Don't overthink it," he said. "Some things just are." He left. Muffin hopped off his canvas throne and stretched, a full-body, slow-motion production that involved extending each leg individually, arching his back to an improbable height, and yawning again with the theatrical commitment of an opera performer warming up. "Your transcription, by the way," he said mid-stretch. "Third line. You've got Lumina as light. It's passage. Funeral passages, not funeral lights. The glyph variant has a descending stroke on the second character that shifts the semantic field." He blinked. "You're welcome." He padded after Marcel, his enormous tail held high. At the doorway, he paused, looked back. "Also, your field journal has a coffee stain on page 47 that's obscuring a critical diacritical mark. You might want to address that before you submit your transcription to anyone who matters." The tail flicked. "Assuming anyone reads it, which given your current departmental standing seems statistically unlikely, but hope springs eternal." He vanished around the corner. The tip of his tail lingered for one extra moment, a furry exclamation mark, and then that was gone too. Simone stood in the empty chamber, mouth open, journal clutched to her chest, for significantly longer than she would ever admit to a living soul. She went back into Le Cercueil. She checked the third line. Lumina. She held her magnifying glass over the glyph, tracing the strokes with her fingertip. The descending mark on the second character was faint, barely visible, easily overlooked. Passage, not light. The cat was right. She checked page 47 of her field journal. Coffee stain, diacritical mark obscured. The cat was right about that too. Simone pressed her forehead against the cool limestone and considered her options. She could report the talking cat. To whom? Beaumont? The university? The relevant authorities for talking cat situations, whoever those might be? She could pretend it hadn't happened. Go back to her inscriptions, her dust, her solitude. Or she could go find Muffin and ask him how a cat with a mortifying name and an attitude the size of Marseille knew more about Proto-Celtic diacritical marks than her PhD supervisor. She chose option 3. She found them in the supply corridor, Marcel sitting on an overturned crate, eating bread and cheese with the methodical contentment of a man who needed nothing beyond bread and cheese and quiet. Muffin sat on the adjacent crate, face deep in a tin of sardines that had been opened and arranged with what Simone could only describe as plating. "You arranged his sardines," Simone said. "He has preferences," Marcel said. "Heads to the left, tails to the right, sorted by size." "They taste better organized," Muffin said, not looking up. "Chaos is the enemy of flavor." Simone sat on a third crate, uninvited. Marcel didn't object. Muffin's ear rotated toward her, but his focus remained on the sardines. "How do you know Proto-Celtic diacritical variants?" she asked. "I read." Muffin extracted a sardine with surgical delicacy, chewed twice, and swallowed. "Marcel has an extensive personal library, 13 boxes. I've worked through 11. The remaining 2 are mostly Tom Clancy, which I refuse to engage with on principle." "Tom Clancy is perfectly fine," Marcel murmured. Tom Clancy is adequate. Muffin selected his next sardine. Like me, apparently. Marcel's mouth twitched, the closest thing to a smile Simone had seen from him. You read academic texts, Simone said slowly, on ancient languages. I read everything. I'm a cat. We have extraordinary amounts of unsupervised time. Muffin finished the last sardine and began grooming his whiskers with the focus of a concert pianist warming up. Also, Marcel talks to me about his work. Structural engineering, load-bearing calculations, material stress tolerances. In return, I tell him when the stone sounds wrong. Sounds wrong? I hear frequencies you can't. Muffin tapped one massive paw against the stone floor. Microfractures, pressure shifts, the sound limestone makes before it gives up and falls on someone. His golden eyes lifted to hers. This mountain talks. Most people don't listen. Marcel listens. That's why I chose him. You chose him? He was a lonely widower, with too many sardines and not enough conversation. Muffin resumed grooming. We fulfilled each other's requirements. It was a practical arrangement that evolved into mutual dependence. I'm told humans call this friendship. I call it efficient resource allocation. Marcel reached over and scratched behind Muffin's ear. The cat leaned into it with his eyes closed, and for 3 seconds, the building inspector and the sardine critic and the Proto-Celtic expert disappeared entirely. What remained was just a cat being loved by his person in a quiet corridor underground. Marcel's hand stopped mid-scratch, his head lifted, eyes narrowing toward the deeper chambers. I forgot something in Chamber 7, he said. He stood abruptly, grabbing his tool bag. Stay here. He was gone before Simone could ask what he'd forgotten. Muffin's eyes stayed closed, his chin tilted upward, exposing the full expanse of his throat. The universal cat signal for the service was acceptable, but has now ceased, and someone should rectify this immediately. Simone reached over and scratched behind his ear. The purr that erupted was seismic, a deep, rolling, full-body vibration that Simone felt through the crate, through her boots, possibly through the limestone bedrock beneath them. Lower, Muffin rumbled. 1/2 centimeter south-southeast. You're competent, but your targeting needs calibration. Simone adjusted. There. The purr doubled in intensity. Acceptable. You're hired, Monday through Friday, no holidays. Benefits include my undying tolerance and occasional eye contact. Simone laughed. A real laugh, the first one in weeks that hadn't tasted like dust and professional disappointment. Then Muffin's eyes snapped open. His ears went flat. His entire body went rigid beneath her fingers, muscles locking under the luxurious fur like steel cables pulling taut. The purr cut off so completely the silence felt violent. His head turned toward the deeper chambers with a sharpness that made Simone's pulse spike. Something's wrong, he said. Chamber 7. Muffin was off the crate, on the ground, moving. The lateral bracing, the resonance pattern changed overnight. Someone's been in there. The load distribution is... His tail lashed. Marcel is in there. It's wrong. He ran. Simone scrambled after him, her heart hammering. Muffin was already 10 meters ahead, his massive body moving with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for a cat his size, his paws barely touching stone. They reached the corridor junction. Muffin tore toward Chamber 7. Simone opened her mouth, and the mountain exhaled. Not a crash, not an explosion, a long, slow, surrendering sigh, as if the stone had been holding its breath for 700 years and simply decided to stop. The sound rolled through the corridors like a wave. Dust erupted from the Chamber 7 entrance in a thick gray wall. The floor shuddered. Somewhere deep in the complex, stone screamed against stone. Then silence. Then the human screaming started. Simone ran toward the dust cloud. A hand caught her arm. One of the crew, face gray, eyes wide. You can't go in, the whole ceiling. Marcel was in there. She twisted against the grip. Marcel and his cat. They went in 30 seconds ago. Nobody's going in until emergency services clear it. The next hour bled together in fragments. Sirens against ancient stone. Paramedics in high-vis vests. The crack and grind of rubble being shifted by hand because machinery would bring down more. Simone stood at the perimeter line and watched. Waited, tasted limestone dust and copper and something that might have been prayer. They brought Marcel out first. She knew from the way they carried him. Slow, measured, the terrible gentleness reserved for people who didn't need urgency anymore. Her knees hit the dirt. I was right there. I could hear Muffin saying something was wrong. 30 more seconds and I could have... Then they brought out the cat. A firefighter cradled the enormous body against his chest. Muffin was coated in gray dust, his magnificent caramel and cream fur matted with plaster and grit. His golden eyes were open, unblinking, fixed on the stretcher being loaded into the ambulance, the stretcher that held Marcel. Cats survived, but the way he watched that stretcher, the way his golden eyes tracked it with an understanding that went far beyond animal instinct, a precise, articulate, devastating comprehension of exactly what he had lost and exactly how permanent that loss was. That look wasn't survival. That look was a creature who could read 11 boxes of books and hear frequencies in stone and arrange sardines by size, watching the only person who had ever loved him being carried away. Something cracked behind Simone's ribs. "Good riddance!" A construction worker spat on the ground near the perimeter tape. Cursed animal, led the old man straight into a death trap. Should have never been on site. "That's not what happened," Simone said. "Cat was always poking around restricted areas. Marcel followed him everywhere. Now Marcel's dead." The worker shook his head. "Cursed. Cats don't cause cave-ins. This one did, everyone knows it." The worker turned to his colleague. "Beaumont's already filed the incident report, listed the cat as a contributing hazard. Aggressive, unsupervised animal on an active construction site." He cracked his knuckles. "They dispose of them." "Dispose," Simone repeated. "Standard procedure." The worker shrugged. "Dangerous animal on a site where a man died? Nobody's adopting that liability. He'll be put down by the end of the week." Something cold settled in Simone's stomach. The cat hadn't caused anything. She knew it the way she knew dead languages, not through proof, but through the bone-deep certainty that came from paying attention when nobody else bothered. Marcel had trusted that animal with his life, had brought him to the site every single day, had let him sit 3 feet from heavy machinery because the cat understood the work. Muffin had heard the change, had warned them, had tried to get Marcel there in time to fix it, and now they were going to kill him for it. Simone turned to Beaumont, who stood at the perimeter with his radio and his mustache and his 17 years of experience that hadn't prevented a man from dying. "I need time off," she said. "Now?" Beaumont's eyebrows rose. "Dr. Fontaine, we're in the middle of a crisis. Where did they take the cat?" "The cat?" Beaumont stared at her as if she'd requested directions to another planet. "A man is dead, and you're worried about his cat?" "Where, Henri?" "Animal control. Standard procedure for..." "Which facility?" "Dr. Fontaine, a man died on your site today." The words came out sharp. Raw. "A man I told you was in danger 40 minutes before that ceiling collapsed. I came to you. I reported tremors, metallic taste in the air, microfracture indicators, and you sat there with your sandwich and told me to stay in my lane." Her voice cracked. She steadied it. "So right now, the absolute least you owe me is an address." Beaumont's mustache twitched. His mouth opened, closed. Something flickered behind his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or the first cold fingers of liability. He gave her the address. Simone ran. Her car stalled twice, leaving the gravel lot. The mountain road twisted and switchbacked, and her hands shook on the wheel. The animal control van had 8 minutes on her. She drove too fast around corners that weren't built for speed, chasing taillights that had already vanished. The shelter was locked when she arrived. "Transferred," said the night attendant through the intercom, sounding bored. "The Carcassonne facility handles site-designated animals. 30-minute drive. They're closed until morning." Simone pressed her forehead against the intercom panel. "Is the cat okay?" she asked. "The big Maine Coon from the Montsegur site. Is he—" "Ma'am, I process intake paperwork. I don't assess emotional states." The intercom clicked off. Chapter 2. Simone's alarm went off at 6. She hadn't slept. Not really. 2 hours of shallow, restless drifting, where every time she closed her eyes, she saw golden ones staring back, precise, devastated, understanding everything. She rolled out of bed and reached for the jeans she'd thrown over the chair. Something fell out of the pocket and clattered on the tile floor. Marcel's lighter. She stared at it. Battered brass, dented on one corner, warm from being pressed against her thigh all night. He'd set it on the supply crate during their sardine conversation, and she'd picked it up without thinking. An academic's reflex, always collecting small objects and forgetting to return them. Now there was no one to return it to. She turned it over. On the back, an engraving. M. Sieur Deschamps, Montségur, 38 years. 38 years. The man had worked this mountain for 38 years. Simone grabbed her phone and dialed the site office. Beaumont answered on the 7th ring, his voice thick with sleep and irritation. "Dr. Fontaine, it is 6 in the morning. Marcel Deschamps," she said. "Does he have family? Someone I should return his personal effects to?" "Deschamps?" A pause, the sound of sheets rustling. "No, no family. Wife passed years ago. No children." Beaumont yawned. The cat was it, really. The man talked to that animal more than he talked to people. "Then I'd like to collect his things from the site. His tool bag, his—" "I'll have someone box it up." "Not a priority right now, Dr. Fontaine. We've got the safety investigation, the insurance people, the—" Beaumont broke off. Muffled sounds. A door opening. "I've got to go now. Goodbye, Dr. Fontaine." He put the phone down without hanging up properly. The call was still active. Simone could hear a second voice. Tinny, distant, but clear enough. She could hear the room, his bedroom probably, and someone had come in. The second voice was male, clipped, educated, handled, the chambers sealed. Forensics won't find anything that contradicts the incident report. Beaumont's voice, closer now, stripped of the sleepy bluster, alert, nervous. That was rushed. The old man saw what he shouldn't. There was nothing we can do about that. But he didn't have to die. "I said there is nothing we can do. Not only him, his cat too." "The cat?" Beaumont sounded confused. "It's at the Carcassonne facility. Hazard designation. It'll be processed by— The cat is not a normal cat, Henri." The voice turned patient, the way someone explained something to a child. Deschamps talked to it, not at it, to it, and the animal responded, in words. Multiple witnesses over the years, though most assumed they'd imagined it. "You're telling me the cat talks?" "I'm telling you the cat was present when Deschamps found the excavation. The cat saw what was behind the wall. And if that cat can communicate what it saw to anyone, then it will be as dead as it's human. Vidal will make sure of that." Simone's hand tightened on the phone so hard the case creaked. She hung up. She was in her car in 90 seconds. Lighter in her pocket, keys in the ignition. Gravel spraying from the tires as she tore down the mountain road. The Carcassonne facility was 30 minutes away, at legal speed. Simone did not drive at legal speed. The shelter was dark when she arrived at 6:34 a.m. No other cars in the lot. She'd beaten Vidal. Barely. The same night, attendant from the intercom answered her pounding with the enthusiasm of a man facing a tax audit. He cracked the door 2 inches. "We open at 8. I know." Simone wedged her boot in the gap. "There's a cat in cage 14 with a hazard designation that was filed fraudulently. I need him released before your processing vet arrives." "I don't release hazard animals. I don't have the authority. I feed them and clean the cages and I go home. Come back someone is coming to kill that cat." The words came out flat and hard. "Not euthanize, kill. To cover up a murder. I can explain everything, but I need you to open this door first." The attendant stared at her. "A murder," he repeated. "A construction worker at the Montségur dig site. The collapse yesterday wasn't an accident. The cat is a witness. The cat." His face cycled through several expressions. "The cat is a witness to a murder. He's a very unusual cat. I've seen a Rottweiler that could open fridges, a parrot that knew 18 swear words in Portuguese, and a hamster that escaped 7 times by unscrewing its cage bolts. Nothing surprises me anymore." He leaned against the doorframe. "But a cat, witnessing a murder, that's new." "Please," Simone said, "there isn't time." "Even if I believed you, which I don't, for the record, I physically cannot release a hazard-flagged animal without Dr. Clement's authorization." He held up his hands. "System's locked. Digital. I can't override it." "Then let me in to see him." "Just to see him." 2 minutes. The attendant sighed, the sigh of a man who knew this would end badly and had decided to let it happen anyway. 2 minutes. He stepped aside. Row C. Don't touch anything. Don't open anything. And if anyone asks, you were never here. The facility smelled like bleach and despair and kibble. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in the pale green of an institutional nightmare. Dogs shifted in their cages as she passed, curious, hopeful, tails thumping against metal bars. Row C. Cats. Cage 14 was at the end of the row, a standard municipal enclosure, metal bars, plastic tray, water bowl that looked like it had survived the revolution. Muffin sat in the center of the cage, his enormous body filling most of the available space. His magnificent fur was still matted with gray dust from the collapse. His water bowl was untouched. His litter tray was pristine. He was staring at the wall. "Muffin," Simone whispered. "Nothing." "Muffin, it's Simone, from the dig. I need to get you out of here." His ear twitched. 1 degree, then nothing. "They're coming to kill you. Vidal, the man from the dig. He's on his way right now. They know you can talk. They know Marcel found something in Chamber 7 and they think you saw it too." Silence. "I overheard them. Beaumont and someone else. They said Marcel was in the restricted section and found an excavation behind a false wall. And they said," she gripped the bars, "they said you need to be dealt with. Today. Before you can tell anyone what you saw." Muffin's head turned. Slowly. The way a battleship's turret rotates, vast, deliberate, and suggesting that whatever it pointed at next was going to have a very bad day. His golden eyes locked onto hers. "They're blaming Marcel," he said. His voice was hoarse, raw, for his own death. "Yes. And they're blaming me." "Yes. And now they want to kill me to make sure the truth stays buried, literally, in a collapsed chamber." His tail lashed once. "How unimaginative! How profoundly, insultingly unimaginative! Can you open the cage?" "Of course I can open the cage. It's a sliding bolt designed for animals with an average IQ of 4. I have been choosing not to open it because—" He stopped. His jaw worked. "Because if Marcel were here, he'd open it for me. And I wanted—" His voice cracked. "I know," Simone said softly. "I know." Muffin closed his eyes, drew a breath that shuddered through his entire body. Then one massive paw slid through the bars, hooked beneath the bolt, and flicked it sideways with a precision that would have made a safecracker weep. The cage door swung open. Muffin stepped out, enormous, dust-covered, utterly dignified despite smelling like institutional disinfectant and 12 hours of grief. "I refuse to be carried," he announced. "I am not luggage." "Fine, can you run?" "I am a 25-pound apex predator with a personal best of 32 kilometers per hour. The question is whether you can run." They ran. Back down the aisle, past the dogs, who erupted into supportive barking that shook the walls, past the night attendant, whose mouth opened and stayed open, through the front door into gray dawn light. Headlights, a car, dark, pulling into the lot from the main road. Simone grabbed Muffin. "I said I refused to be—" Shoved him into the carrier she'd left by the entrance and sprinted for her car. The dark car was 30 meters away. 20. She could see the driver now. Slim, well-dressed, charcoal wool jacket. Vidal. She jammed her key into the ignition. Nothing. She turned it again. The engine made a sound like a sick animal. A grinding, clicking wheeze that spoke of mechanical betrayal. "No, no, no. Your engine isn't starting," Muffin observed from the carrier. "I'm aware. Have you considered that this might not be a coincidence?" Simone popped the bonnet release, jumped out, lifted the hood. Even she could see it. The spark plug cables, pulled loose, cut clean, not torn, not worn, cut with a tool, recently. "Someone sabotaged my car." Her voice came out remarkably calm for a woman standing in a shelter car park with a stolen cat and a murderer 50 meters away. "While you were inside trying to get me out, they were outside disabling your transport," Muffin said. "Efficient. I'd admire it if I weren't the intended victim." Vidal's car had stopped. The door opened. "Run," Muffin said. Simone grabbed the carrier and ran. Not toward the road. Vidal would follow by car. She cut behind the recycling bins, vaulted a low fence with the carrier banging against her hip, and plunged into the scrubby field behind the tire warehouse.
I can run by myself.
Muffin's voice bounced with each stride. This is humiliating. I am experiencing motion sickness and a crisis of dignity simultaneously. You're in a carrier. Unzip me. I have 4 legs. They work. I've been using them since before you were born. Simone unzipped the carrier without stopping. Muffin launched himself out like a furry cannonball, hit the ground running, and within 3 strides was keeping pace beside her with the fluid grace of a small, enraged lion. Left, he commanded, veering toward a drainage ditch. Through the culvert. He can't follow in a car. They dove into the culvert, concrete, damp, smelling of stagnant water and regret. Simone's knees splashed through puddles. Muffin moved over the surface like a hovercraft, his massive paws barely touching down. They emerged on the far side into farmland. Open fields, a 2-lane road stretching east toward the mountains. Behind them, distant, the sound of a car engine revving. Doors slamming, footsteps on gravel. He's on foot, Simone panted. Then we have approximately 4 minutes before he calls for backup, and approximately 7 minutes before I expire from exertion. I'm built for short bursts of elegant violence, not marathon running. We need transport. Obviously. Do you see any? Simone scanned the road. Empty. Dawn mist hung in the fields like cotton, blurring the edges of everything. No cars, no tractors, nothing. Then she heard it. The low rumble of a diesel engine coming from the west. She turned and saw it. A farm truck, ancient and enormous, chugging up the road with the urgency of a pensioner on a Sunday walk. The open bed was stacked with hay bales and, visible above the wooden sides, the ears and faces of livestock. "A farm truck," Simone said. Muffin's ears flattened. "Absolutely not. It's transport. It's a mobile zoo. I can smell it from here. That's goat, that's sheep, that's—" His nose wrinkled in elaborate horror. "That's donkey. We don't have a choice. We always have a choice. Some choices are simply more offensive to the senses than others." The truck was slowing for the curve. Simone ran toward it, waving her arms. The driver, elderly, sun-creased, wearing a cap that predated the European Union, peered at her through a windscreen that appeared to be held together by dirt and optimism. She reached the cab. "Please, I need a ride. It's an emergency. My car broke down and no room." The driver jerked his thumb toward the cab's passenger seat, which was occupied by a border collie, a crate of cabbages, and what appeared to be a small shrine to the Virgin Mary. "Full. In the back? With the animals? Just to the next town? Animals don't like strangers." The driver was already reaching for the gear stick. "Spook the donkey and he'll kick out the tailgate. Again." The truck lurched forward. Muffin sighed. "Wait here." Before Simone could respond, he was gone, a streak of caramel fur launching himself onto the truck's rear bumper and disappearing over the tailgate. Sounds erupted from the truck bed, bleating, stamping, a sharp, startled bray. Then, impossibly, the sounds organized themselves. The bleating dropped to murmurs. The stamping stopped. The braying became a series of rhythmic conversational snorts, punctuated by Muffin's baritone. Simone stood on the road, watching the truck slow and stop, and wondered at what point her life had become a livestock negotiation. Muffin's head appeared above the tailgate. "The donkey's name is Gerard," he announced. "He has conditions." "The donkey has conditions?" "Gerard is a professional. He's transported cargo across this region for 9 years and takes his responsibilities seriously. He says the truck bed is at capacity. Weight distribution is critical. One additional passenger, particularly a human, would compromise the structural integrity of the hay arrangement he spent all morning perfecting. The donkey arranged the hay? He has a system. I respect it. It's better organized than most academic departments." The truck driver had gotten out and was standing beside Simone, staring at his own vehicle with the expression of a man questioning his sobriety. "Your cat," the driver said, "is talking to my donkey." "He does that," Simone said, "in donkey. He's multilingual." The driver removed his cap, rubbed his head, replaced the cap, and said nothing for several seconds. Muffin's head ducked below the tailgate. More conversational braying. Then he reappeared. Gerard can't take us on the truck. However, he says there's a market depot 2 kilometers east where transport lorries stop for coffee between 6:30 and 7:30. Livestock haulers, produce trucks, commercial vehicles heading to Toulouse. He recommends the livestock haulers. They're used to unusual passengers and don't ask questions. The donkey knows the local transport schedules? Gerard knows everything about this road. He's been on it longer than the asphalt. Muffin dropped from the tailgate, landing beside her with a heavy thud. He also says if we cut through the vineyard behind the petrol station, we'll avoid the main road entirely. Vidal won't be able to follow by car. Muffin paused, then added, I told Gerard about our situation. He said, and I'm translating loosely, humans who harm animals deserve to be kicked in the chest. I find his moral framework refreshingly straightforward. The truck pulled away. Through the slats, Simone caught a glimpse of Gerard, gray-brown, long-eared, watching them with dark, intelligent eyes. She could have sworn the donkey nodded. They ran. Through the vineyard, stripped bare by autumn, the twisted vines like arthritic fingers reaching for a sky that wasn't interested. Through an olive grove, silver-green leaves catching the first real light, the ground soft and loamy beneath their feet, along a stone wall that bordered someone's property, ducking low, moving fast. Muffin kept pace beside her. His massive body moved with surprising efficiency. Low to the ground, tail streaming behind him, paws eating distance with a rhythm that said, I could do this all day, but I'd prefer not to. How are you doing? Simone panted. I'm a fugitive from municipal animal control, fleeing through agricultural terrain with a woman I've known for 18 hours. My person is dead, my sardines are gone, and I stepped in something in that olive grove that I deeply hope was mud. His ears rotated backward, scanning. Other than that, magnificent. The market depot was exactly where Gerard had said it would be. A wide gravel lot beside a service road, dotted with trucks, livestock haulers, flatbeds, a refrigerated lorry with a logo that Simone couldn't read from this distance. A middle-aged woman was loading produce crates onto a flatbed. Simone approached her, explained she needed transport, leaving out the murder, the talking cat, the donkey, and essentially everything that had happened in the last 12 hours, and was directed to a livestock hauler heading to Toulouse with a half-empty trailer. The driver didn't ask questions. He looked at Muffin, looked at Simone, shrugged, and pointed to the cab. They climbed in. The truck pulled onto the highway, and Simone exhaled for the first time in 2 hours. Muffin sat on her lap, reluctantly, but the cab's passenger seat was occupied by a toolbox and a collection of air fresheners shaped like pine trees. Toulouse, he said. 3 hours. Vidal won't know which direction we went. What happens when we get there? We'll figure it out. Together. They didn't reach Toulouse. Muffin directed the driver to drop them at a junction 60 kilometers out, a crossroads where secondary roads branched into the hills. Safer, less traceable. We can't go to Toulouse, Muffin said as they climbed down from the cab. They'll check transport hubs, bus stations, train stations. They have resources. We don't. Then where? Somewhere they won't look. Somewhere off-grid. His golden eyes scanned the junction, the hills, the fading road. For now, we walk. They walked. As the afternoon softened into evening, the road narrowed to a track, then to a path, then to something that might have been a path once and was now mostly a suggestion. The hills rose around them, scrub oak, wild thyme, the distant sound of a stream. Simone's legs ached. Her backpack was light, nearly empty. The day was catching up to her in a wave of exhaustion that made the edges of everything blur. They found a sheltered spot beneath a limestone overhang, a natural alcove protected from wind, carpeted with dry leaves. Not comfortable, not warm, but hidden. Simone sat. Her body thanked her with a symphony of complaints. Muffin settled beside her, his massive bulk radiating warmth against her thigh. Neither of them acknowledged this. Both of them needed it. She divided the remaining food. Half a protein bar, a bruised apple, a handful of almonds from the bottom of her bag, mixed with lint and a pen cap. Muffin accepted 3 almonds with the air of a man accepting a Michelin-starred tasting menu. Thank you, he said. The lint adds texture. Simone ate her half of the apple. The juice ran down her chin. She wiped it with a dusty sleeve and didn't care. Muffin. Yes. What did Marcel find? In Chamber 7, behind the false wall. The question hung in the cooling air. Insects hummed. The stream whispered somewhere below them, patient and old. Muffin was quiet for so long that Simone thought he might not answer. Symbols, he said finally. Old ones. Older than the Cathar period by several millennia, carved into a hidden chamber that someone had gone to considerable trouble to conceal behind a false wall of medieval stonework. His tail curled around his paws. Marcel didn't understand what they meant, but he knew they were important. He could feel it. The way he felt stress in stone. Something in the air of that chamber, a vibration. What kind of symbols? Markers, directions. Coordinates, essentially, carved in a language that predates anything in your university's catalog. His golden eyes caught the last of the light. They point to a treasure. A treasure hunt? Simone almost laughed. You're joking. In this day and age? Have you watched The Goonies, Simone? National Treasure, Raiders of the Lost Ark? Those are movies. Those are documentaries compared to what I'm describing. Muffin's whiskers twitched. This isn't some fantasy quest with a parchment map and a skull with ruby eyes. This is real treasure, real gold. Ancient, concentrated, hidden for millennia by people who understood exactly what men would do to possess it. He paused. The kind of treasure that is worth collapsing a ceiling on a 68-year-old mason who asked the wrong questions. A chill traced Simone's spine. People kill for much less than that. People kill for a parking space in the Sixium. Imagine what they'd do for a vault of pre-Roman gold. The overhang went silent. Even the insects stopped. Simone's throat closed. Her eyes burned. She reached out and placed her hand on Muffin's back. Lightly, not pressing, just touching, letting him feel her there. He didn't pull away. Marcel gave me purpose, he said quietly. Gave me language, gave me sardines sorted by size. A breath that shuddered through his whole body. Now that's all gone. I can be your human. The words came out before Simone could second-guess them. I can give you sardines. No. Muffin's voice was firm, gentle but firm. No more sardines. They'll remind me of him, and I can't afford to be sad every time I eat. His tail flicked once. Find me something else. Something that's ours, not his. I'll figure it out. We'll do a tasting. A proper one. Simone paused. And the companion part? Muffin was silent for a long moment. The stream murmured below. A nightbird called once, distant and uncertain. I accept, he said, but I have conditions. Of course you do. I will never be put into a carrier again. Deal. I require a window seat in any and all accommodation. Non-negotiable. Done. And if you ever refer to me as your pet in public, I will shed on every piece of clothing you own until the end of recorded time. You're not my pet. You're my colleague. Muffin's ears perked forward. Colleague. He tasted the word. That's acceptable. Slightly beneath consultant, but I'll allow it. Colleague it is. Simone held out her hand. Deal? Muffin placed one massive paw on her palm. Warm. Heavy. The claws stayed sheathed. Deal. The sky turned violet. Stars began to appear, faint and tentative, like they weren't sure they were welcome. Muffin was quiet for a while, then his head turned just enough to look at her. You're not safe anymore, he said. You took me. They know. They'll have your name, your address, your rental cottage. The thought had been circling Simone's mind for hours. She'd pushed it away. Now it landed. I know. So what do we do? The unfamiliar path, the vast, uncertain emptiness of a life that had, in the space of 24 hours, lost every anchor she had. Her work, her site, her cottage, her already fragile career. All she had was a backpack with lint-covered almonds and a 25-pound cat who was grieving and furious and smarter than half the academics she knew. We survive tonight, she said. And in the morning, we figure out the rest. That's not a plan. That's a postponement. Then it's a postponement. She leaned back against the limestone. I'm very good at those. Muffin studied her for a long moment, then very slowly he shifted closer. His massive body pressed against her side. His fur was warm, his heartbeat was steady against her ribs. "For the record," he said, "this changes nothing. I am tolerating your proximity because the alternative is being cold, which I find personally offensive." "Understood. And your half of the protein bar had more chocolate chips than mine. I counted." "You want my last almond?" "I want justice, but the almond will do." She gave him the almond. He ate it with the gravity of a starving king accepting tribute. Within minutes, his breathing slowed. His body relaxed against hers, heavy and warm and trusting in a way that contradicted every word he'd said. Simone sat in the dark, her back against ancient stone, a fugitive cat pressed to her side, and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Not safety, not hope. Something simpler. She was not alone. Chapter 3. Dawn came cold and pale over the limestone hills. Simone woke with a crick in her neck, dead leaves in her hair, and a 25-pound cat sitting on her chest, staring at her with the focus of a surgeon about to deliver a diagnosis. "We're going back," Muffin said. "Good morning to you, too. We're going back to the site, to Vidal, to Chamber 7. His golden eyes blazed. "Marcel deserves justice, and I intend to deliver it, personally with prejudice." Simone sat up, dislodging him. He landed on the leaves with a thud of wounded dignity. "Muffin, I understand what you're feeling. You understand nothing. What I'm feeling is a 25-pound ball of targeted fury with excellent problem-solving skills and a comprehensive knowledge of human pressure points." His tail lashed. "I'm going to make Vidal suffer. That's revenge. That's justice. There's a difference. Enlighten me." Simone brushed leaves from her jacket and looked at him. Really looked. Past the bristled fur and the blazing eyes to the grief underneath. The rage that was just pain wearing a different coat. "Revenge is making someone hurt because you're hurting," she said. "Justice is making sure they can't hurt anyone else." She held his gaze. "Marcel wouldn't want you to become something ugly for his sake." "Marcel is dead. He doesn't get a vote." "He gets the only vote that matters, because whatever we do in his name." Simone's voice softened. "So what would Marcel want? The man who apologized to stone before he drilled it? Who sorted your sardines by size? Who spent 38 years treating a mountain with more respect than most people treat each other?" Muffin went still. The stream murmured below. A bird sang somewhere, tentative and brave. "He'd want it done right," Muffin said finally. His voice had lost its edge. "Clean, legal, no cruelty. Justice, justice." He tested the word like a cat testing a new surface. Cautious, deliberate, not fully committed. "Fine, but I reserve the right to be creative within the boundaries of justice." "How creative?" "You'll see." His whiskers twitched. Something shifted in his expression, the grief banking itself behind a wall of focused, feline intelligence. "I have a plan. It requires returning to the site, a recording device, and approximately 200 milliliters of my urine. I'm going to regret asking, but your urine? All will become clear. Do you have your phone?" "Yes." "Does it record audio?" "It's not that ancient." "Debatable, but it'll do." He stood, stretched, the full production, each leg extended individually, and padded toward the path. "We'll need to reach the site by the time Vidal takes his morning coffee. He drinks it at precisely 7:15, black, 2 sugars. From a thermos he leaves on his desk while he does his first inspection round. You know his coffee schedule? I know everyone's coffee schedule. I'm a cat. Observing human routines is 70% of my job. The other 30% is judging them for it. They hitched a ride on a mail van heading north. The driver was a cheerful woman named Colette, who asked no questions about why a disheveled academic and an enormous cat needed to reach Montsegur at dawn. "My ex-husband had a cat like that," she said, glancing at Muffin in the rearview mirror. "Huge, opinionated, ate better than I did." She paused. "Come to think of it, that's why he's my ex." The dig site was quiet when they arrived, early morning. The construction crews hadn't started yet. A single light burned in the equipment tent, Vidal's office. Simone crouched behind the supply shed, her phone's audio recorder running in her jacket pocket. Muffin sat beside her, grooming one paw with the serene focus of an assassin polishing a weapon. "You're sure about this?" she whispered. "I've never been more sure of anything in my 9 lives." He finished grooming and fixed her with his golden stare. "Vidal's thermos is on his desk. He's doing his morning inspection of the East Corridor. He'll be back in 12 minutes. And I'm going to season his coffee." Muffin stood. "Wait here. Don't move. Don't breathe too loudly. Your breathing is distractingly human." He vanished around the corner of the shed. Simone waited, counted seconds, tried not to think about what seasoning meant in this context. 3 minutes later, Muffin reappeared, looking deeply satisfied. 9 minutes later, Vidal emerged from the East Corridor, slim, pressed, the charcoal jacket immaculate. He walked to his desk in the equipment tent, picked up his thermos, and poured a generous measure into his mug. He drank. Simone watched his face cycle through the 5 stages of beverage grief: confusion, suspicion, denial, investigation, and finally, the sniff of the thermos. Absolute horror. The sound that came out of him was not professional. "What the?" Muffin stepped out from behind the supply crate. He sat in the middle of the path, directly in Vidal's sightline, and began grooming his chest with exaggerated slowness. "My pea pairs perfectly with 2 sugar." Vidal's mug slipped. Coffee, seasoned coffee, splashed across his shoes. "You," he breathed. "You're supposed to be dead? Disposed of? Converted to landfill?" Muffin licked one paw and drew it over his ear. "I get that a lot. It never sticks. How did you get out? Who brought you?" "Wrong questions, Dr. Vidal." Muffin stood. His tail swished once. "The right question is, what does this cat know that could ruin your life?" Vidal's jaw clenched. His eyes darted around the empty site. "The answer," Muffin continued pleasantly, "is everything. I was there when Marcel found the chamber. I was there when you tampered with the braces. I saw what was behind that wall." He blinked. "And I can read it." Silence. "You can't read, Ancient." "I can read things you can't even see, Dr. Vidal. That's the fun part." Muffin turned and padded toward the tomb entrance. Casual, unhurried. The walk of a cat who had somewhere to be and all the time in the world to get there. He paused at the corridor mouth and looked back. "Coming?" Vidal didn't move. "You haven't been able to translate the markers, have you?" Muffin's voice carried the mild sympathy of a tutor addressing a struggling student. "That's why you haven't moved the treasure yet. You know it exists. You know it's valuable. But you can't read the map." He yawned. "Must be very frustrating. All that murder and nothing to show for it." A muscle twitched in Vidal's cheek. "I didn't murder." Marcel Deschamps. "Chamber 7, tampered braces, Tuesday evening." Muffin recited it like a grocery list. "Shall I continue, or would you prefer to skip to the part where we discuss terms?" "Terms? Terms!" Muffin sat down, wrapped his tail around his paws, and arranged his face into what Simone, watching from behind the supply shed, phone recording, barely breathing, could only describe as his boardroom expression. "Marcel is dead. I am regrettably a realist. Grief doesn't pay for smoked trout, and I find myself in need of a new financial arrangement." Vidal stared at him. "You need someone who can read the markers," Muffin said. "I need someone who can convert ancient gold into modern currency. I believe the business world calls this synergy." "You're offering to help me?" Vidal's voice climbed with disbelief. "You? Marcel's cat?" "Marcel's former cat. Marcel is dead. Loyalty to the deceased doesn't keep one fed." Muffin examined his claws with studied indifference. "I'm a pragmatist, Dr. Vidal. It's a cat trait. We land on our feet. We adapt. We form alliances with whoever holds the tin opener." Something shifted in Vidal's face, the fear receding, calculation replacing it, the expression of a man who had just been offered exactly what he needed by the last source he'd expected. "You can actually read the markers?" he asked. "The symbols behind the wall?" "Every character, every line, every directional coordinate." Muffin's whiskers twitched. "Can you?" "No." The admission came out grudging, painful. Renaud's team couldn't crack it either. The linguistic family doesn't match anything in the academic databases. Because it's not in any academic database. It's a language that exists only in spirit text, a symbolic layer invisible to human eyes. Muffin allowed himself a small, smug smile. Lucky for you, I'm not human. Vidal took a step closer. What do you want? 30%. 30? Vidal choked. Of the treasure? You're a cat. A cat who can read the only map to a vault of pre-Roman gold that you spent a man's life to reach. 30% or I walk. And I promise you, Dr. Vidal, no one else on this planet can do what I do. Muffin held his gaze. Well, Renault's taking his cut, you're taking yours. Beaumont's getting his silence fee. Everyone profits from Marcel's death except Marcel. He paused. And me. I'd like to correct that imbalance. Vidal's tongue darted across his lips. The greed was winning. Simone could see it, the way his posture shifted, leaning forward, calculating percentages, already spending gold that had been buried since before the Romans. 20%, Vidal said. 28. 25, final offer. 25% of the gross value, not net. I'm not absorbing your extraction costs. Muffin's tail flicked. And I want it in writing. In writing? You want a contract? I want a verbal agreement, clearly stated, covering the following terms. My percentage, the location of the treasure as described by the markers I'll translate, and your confirmation that the markers in Chamber 7 are the ones Marcel discovered before his death. Muffin's voice was silk over steel. For my records. Vidal should have heard it. The precision, the careful framing, the way Muffin was asking him to confirm out loud every piece of information that connected him to Marcel's discovery and Marcel's death. But greed is louder than caution. It always has been. Fine, Vidal said. 25% of the gross value of whatever the markers in Chamber 7 lead to. The markers that Deschamps found behind the false wall before... He caught himself. Before the collapse. Before you collapse the ceiling on him, Muffin corrected gently. Let's be precise. This is a business arrangement. Precision matters. Vidal's eye twitched. When you weakened the lateral braces on Tuesday night so that the chamber would come down on a man who was going to report your illegal excavation to the authorities, I didn't plan for him to die. The words rushed out. Defensive, automatic, the confession of a man who had stopped hearing anything except the sound of gold. It was supposed to scare him, block the chamber, buy time. Renault said we only needed 2 more weeks to translate the markers, which you couldn't do because you needed me. Muffin nodded. And instead of asking the cat nicely, you killed his human and tried to have him euthanized. He tilted his head. Poor business strategy, Dr. Vidal. Very poor. Are we doing this deal or not? Vidal snapped. His composure was gone, stripped away by greed and guilt and the surreal experience of negotiating profit margins with a Maine Coon. 25%. You translate the markers. We extract the treasure. Nobody else needs to know about Deschamps or the braces or any of it. Nobody else, Muffin repeated thoughtfully. Just you, me, and Renault. That's the circle. That's how it stays. How delightfully specific. Muffin sat up straighter. So, to summarize, you tampered with the braces in Chamber 7 to prevent Marcel from reporting the illegal excavation you and Renault were conducting behind the false wall. The collapse killed Marcel, which you describe as unintended, but accept as a consequence of your actions. The markers behind the wall lead to a pre-Roman gold deposit that neither you nor Renault can locate without my translation skills. You're offering me 25% of the gross value in exchange for my services and my silence. He blinked those enormous golden eyes. Is that accurate? Yes, that's the deal. Now can we... Wonderful. Muffin turned toward the supply shed. Simone, did you get all that? Vidal's face went blank. Simone stepped out from behind the shed, phone raised, red recording light glowing like a small, damning star. Every word, she said. The color drained from Vidal's face in stages, forehead first, then cheeks, then lips, like watching a tide go out. You, his mouth worked. That was a negotiation, Muffin said. Just not the one you thought. He began grooming his chest with the serene contentment of a cat whose work was done. For the record, I would never take 25%. My minimum is 40. I have standards. Vidal lunged toward Simone. Muffin launched from the ground with the explosive force of a furry landmine. 25 pounds of Maine Coon hit Vidal's chest like a battering ram. The man staggered backward, arms flailing, feet catching on the uneven ground, and tripped directly into the arms of 2 gendarmes who had been standing very quietly at the site entrance for the last 4 minutes. "Dr. Luc Vidal?" The lead officer caught him with practiced efficiency. "We've been listening, and I have to say, I've never heard a suspect negotiate his own confession before. It's a first for the department." Handcuffs clicked. Vidal sagged. Muffin sat on the ground between the officers, grooming one paw with exaggerated casualness. "I'd like it noted," he said, "that my consulting fee for this operation is still outstanding. I accept payment in smoked trout and formal written apologies." The lead officer looked at Muffin, looked at Simone, looked at Vidal, slumped in handcuffs, undone by a cat. "I need a transfer," he muttered. They led Vidal out in handcuffs. 2 more police cars arrived. Beaumont appeared from somewhere, looking like a man who had swallowed a very large, very indigestible truth. He would not meet Simone's eyes. Good. The recording was transferred, statements were taken, an investigation was opened, not just into Marcel's death, but into the illegal excavation, the concealed chamber, and the network behind it. Renaud's name surfaced within the hour. It was over. Almost. Simone and Muffin stood alone in the corridor outside Chamber 7. The emergency lights hummed. The stone breathed its ancient mineral breath. "There's something I need to do," Muffin said. He padded into the chamber, past the rubble, past the place where Marcel had died, past the temporary supports and the barricade tape, to the far wall where the false stonework had been pulled away. Behind it, the hidden chamber, the ancient symbols, the treasure markers that had cost Marcel his life. Muffin studied the wall. His paw traced a line of symbols Simone couldn't see. Spirit text, invisible to human eyes, legible only to him. "There," he said softly, "a lever, carved into the stone. The spirits built a failsafe." Simone moved beside him. She could see it now, a thin depression in the rock face, shaped like a handhold, ancient, deliberate. "What does it do?" "Closes the chamber, permanently, buries the markers under 1,000 tons of limestone." Muffin looked up at her. "The treasure will still exist, somewhere, but the map to find it will be gone forever." "You're sure?" "The spirits are sure, and the spirits have been maintaining this mountain since before your species invented fire. I trust their engineering." Simone wrapped her hand around the stone lever. Cool, rough. It fit her grip like it had been carved for a human hand, because it had been, thousands of years ago, for this exact moment. "For Marcel," she said. "For Marcel," Muffin agreed. She pulled. The stone groaned, shifted. Deep inside the mountain, something vast and heavy began to move. The slow, grinding, inexorable sound of a secret burying itself forever. The false wall reformed, stone sealed against stone with a whisper of finality. The symbols faded. The spirit text dimmed and vanished. The mountain exhaled again, but this time it sounded like relief. 1 week later, Paris. The cafe on Rue de Bussy was warm and crowded and smelled like fresh bread and possibility. Simone sat at a corner table with a café crème and a stack of university forms. Muffin occupied the opposite chair, which he'd claimed by sitting in it before anyone else could, and refusing to move with such aristocratic conviction that even the waiter had given up. In front of Muffin sat a small plate of smoked trout. Not sardines, never sardines again. Smoked trout was the compromise they'd reached after a week-long tasting process that had involved 17 varieties of fish and a scoring matrix Muffin had designed himself. Smoked trout scored 9.2 out of 10. "I could go higher," Muffin had said, "but perfection should be pursued, not achieved. It keeps one motivated." Simone signed the last form and set down her pen. "Done. Officially reinstated at the university. Research position. My own lab. And your research assistant?" "Officially listed as Monsieur Deschamps, consulting specialist in acoustic diagnostics and ancient text interpretation." She smiled. Nobody asked if the M stood for Muffin. Nobody should. It stands for magnificent. Common misconception. Now we need a research topic. Simone pulled out her notebook. Something that justifies the lab funding and doesn't involve treasure maps, murder, or municipal animal shelters. Muffin licked a flake of trout from his whisker and sat up straighter. The look on his face was one Simone had come to recognize. The look that preceded his most spectacular ideas and his most outrageous demands. "I have a proposal," he said. "Go on." "A comparative study of interspecies linguistic frameworks as observed in domesticated and semi-domesticated mammalian populations, with particular focus on the pragmatic syntax of caprine vocalizations and their correlation to emotional states in agrarian communities." Simone stared at him. "You want to study how goats talk?" "I want to revolutionize the field of animal communication studies." His tail swished. "Starting with goats. They're vastly underappreciated as conversationalists. Gerard alone could fill 3 journals. Muffin, no university on Earth is going to fund a study on goat linguistics." "Not with that attitude," he sniffed. "Fine. I have a second proposal. More traditional, more fundable." His eyes gleamed. "More interesting." He pushed a printed page across the table with one paw. Simone picked it up. It was an academic posting from a Japanese university. A collaborative excavation at a volcanic site in the southern highlands. Ancient symbols found in a newly accessible chamber. Symbols that matched no known language system. Specialist in pre-Celtic and Proto-European text interpretation sought for 6-month residency. The symbols in the photograph looked familiar. Very familiar. "These match what Marcel found," Simone said slowly. "The same symbolic family. The same period." "Interesting coincidence, isn't it?" Muffin's whiskers twitched. "Almost as if the people who carved the markers in Chamber 7 also carved something on the other side of the world." "You want me to apply for this?" "I want you to pack a bag." Muffin's golden eyes held hers. "I had a dream about that mountain, Simone." "You had a dream?" "Cat's dream. It's scientifically documented. Ours are simply more prophetic than yours." He licked another flake of trout and chewed it thoughtfully. "In my dream, you were at the volcano, and you met someone." "Someone?" "A man, with blue eyes and a jawline that could cut glass." Muffin's expression was carefully neutral. "Your fated mate, your forever person, the one the universe has been saving for you." Simone laughed. "Muffin, I'm an academic. I believe in peer-reviewed evidence and reproducible results. I do not believe in fated mates." "You didn't believe in talking cats either." He blinked. "And yet here we are, discussing goat linguistics over smoked trout." "That's different." "Is it?" Simone looked at the posting again. The volcanic site, the ancient symbols, the 6-month residency in a country she'd never visited, studying something that might connect to everything Marcel had found. "There is absolutely no scientific basis for the concept of fated mates," she said. "Correct. There is also no scientific basis for a cat reading spirit text, or negotiating with a donkey, or solving a murder by urinating in a man's coffee." Muffin's tail curled around his paws. "And yet, all of those things happened this week." Simone bit her lip. "I'll make you a wager," Muffin said. "A wager. If we go to Japan, and you do not meet your fated mate at that volcano, I will learn to fetch, like a dog, on command, in public." His ears flattened at the very thought. "The ultimate humiliation. I would rather be put back in cage 14. And if I do meet him? Then you name your firstborn child after me." "I am not naming a child Muffin. You could name them Magnificent. I'd accept that." He nudged the posting closer. "Do we have a wager?" Simone looked at the cat, at the posting, at the cafe around them, the warm bread, the busy tables, the ordinary Parisian morning that felt, for the first time in years, like the beginning of something rather than the middle of nothing. She'd lost her career once and rebuilt it, lost her courage and found it again, found a friend in the last place she'd expected, in a municipal cage, covered in dust, too magnificent to die. What was one more impossible thing? "Deal," she said. Muffin's face remained perfectly composed, but his tail, his ridiculous, enormous, glorious tail, curled into a shape that looked, if Simone squinted, remarkably like a smile.
Pack light, he said. I have a feeling we're going to need to run at some point.
It seems to be our thing, and bring a parachute. Simone laughed, picked up the posting, and began composing her application email. Outside, Paris hummed its eternal hum. Pigeons argued on the windowsill. A waiter brought more bread, and at the corner table of a cafe on Rue de Bussy, a woman and her cat planned their next adventure. One of them armed with a PhD and a freshly reclaimed sense of purpose, the other armed with 9 lives, 0 shame, and the unshakable conviction that the universe owed his human a spectacular love story. He intended to collect.
And that's Paris Magnificent Muffin. I told you the sardines would get you. Don't pretend your eyes are dry. I can sense these things. Fairy librarian. We have skills. So, Simone has a cat. Muffin has a human. They have a wager about a volcano in Japan and a fated mate with blue eyes and a jawline that could cut glass. Want to know what happens when they get there? Because I've read it. And I need to tell you. The volcano is the least dangerous thing Simone walks into. The man she meets, he's got a missing daughter, a dark ritual, and a wolf that hasn't spoken in years. And Muffin? Muffin does something in that story that I still think about at 3 in the morning when I should be sleeping. I can't tell you what, but I can tell you where to find it. The gold story, Love and Cold Lava, is waiting for you at happynovels.com. Link in the description. And if you know someone who needs a magnificent cat in their life, and let's be honest, everyone does, share this story. Send it to a friend. Send it to an enemy. I don't judge. There are more bonus stories and happy hours at happynovels.com. The silver tier is free, so come join the pack and you'll never miss a bonus or a limited time release. I'll be here every week with a new story, a new introduction that goes on too long, and absolutely no improvement in my on-camera skills. I've accepted this about myself. Actually, I have an idea. I might interview a sidekick in the next episode. That might be a stretch for my skill level, but I'm going to try. You never know. If you enjoyed the story and what I do here as a host, give this video a thumbs up. And if you want more Muffin, more Simone, and more of the alpha with the incredible jawline, go to happynovels.com. I'm Mabel. Thank you for spending this time with me. The voice lessons are ongoing. Pray for my teacher. Until next time, stay cozy and stay in love.